So Creality says their brand new Falcon A1 Pro can engrave faster, cut deeper, and do it all automatically with built-in autofocus and smart air assist. Sounds great, right? But here's the thing. A lot of lasers make those same claims. So I ran this one through real projects that include wood, acrylic, and even metal to see if it's actually worth your money, and what I found might surprise you. And for full transparency, I do want to let you know that Creality did send the Falcon A1 Pro to me just so I could do this review. I'm not being paid for this, and everything I'm going to show you in this review are my own words and experiences. Also, at the end of this video, if you decide to pick one up yourself, make sure you use my link in the video description so you guys can save some money during checkout. So one of the things I absolutely love about this engraver that makes it so user-friendly, especially for beginners, is that everything comes pre-assembled. So you can pretty much take it right out of the box and start using it. There's nothing that you have to put together yourself. All right, so here is the laser itself. Again, it is pretty heavy, and the reason for that is because it's made of solid metal. It does not feel cheap at all. So we can just lift up the top here. You can see there's a camera built in to the top. Everything else is inside the laser already. We've got our manual. We've got our touch screen. Here's our power brick, our power cable. Here we've got some accessories. It looks like we have a metal ring here. We also have some tubing, some keys to lock the system, and a cable for our rotary tool that you can get in addition to the laser. And we also do have a little brush. Here's our exhaust tubing. And it also comes with an air assist module. If you guys don't know what this is, you are going to absolutely love this, especially if you engrave wood, and I'll show you why later on in the video. The front also comes down, kind of like a little pizza oven. We also get a piece of wood for testing our engraver. We also get a calibration card. And in case you're wondering, like I was, the bottom of the laser is also removable, so you can have this whole bottom open, and I'll show you why that's important later on in the video. The Falcon A1 also has some pretty nice features, including a work area of 358 millimeters by 268 millimeters. It also has app control, so if by chance you don't have a computer, you can always use your phone. It also has a smart touchscreen that displays your current working project, along with some saved projects that you might save on your USB. It also has a smart camera for easy alignment of your engravings on your materials. It's got an autofocus with a 0.3 millimeter precision. The laser can engrave up to 600 millimeters a second. It can cut up to 10 millimeter basewood and 8 millimeter black acrylic. It's also got a really nice all metal enclosure. The enclosure's also got a Class 1 laser safety rating, along with some other safety protections, including flame detection, an emergency stop button, lid open laser stop, and the enclosure also blocks harmful laser light and fumes from your home. So on the right side of the A1 Pro, we've got a Type-C connection for USBs and other accessories. We have another Type-C connection that connects to your computer. We've got the air inlet for the air assist. We also have a connection for the optional rotary kit. We've got our on-off button. We also have the power connection for the A1 Pro. We've got a power connection for the air assist, which is nice. And we also have a lock that you're going to have to unlock before you can actually use the unit itself. So if you don't want your kids messing around with the unit, you can actually lock it and they won't be able to use it at all. And then right here we have our emergency switch. So if anything happens, you just slap this and it'll automatically shut down the A1. And then if you want to resume using it, you just simply twist it and it'll unlock the emergency button. On the back of the unit, we do have a rather small exhaust port. This is about a 2.3 inch diameter on the outside. I've got a 4-inch exhaust system, so I had to make an adapter to make this fit. And then here's the exhaust adapter that I printed for the A1 Pro. It just simply fits right over the exhaust ports that's already on here, and it utilizes the screws that you unscrew from the back of the A1, and then you can put your 4-inch tubing directly on here. And as you can see, it fits perfectly. And now I'm all set to start engraving. There's a couple different ways you can access your print. You can either open the front door, which is kind of like a pizza oven, or you can just open up the top and then you have all this room to access your print as well. We also have a camera here that does have a block in case you're worried about privacy. Also, don't forget to remove the sticker before you first use it. One other thing that I also want to mention that's very important, even though this is a desktop unit and you can use it in your home, you want to make sure that you have some way to exhaust all the fumes from anything that you're engraving outside your home or into an air purifier. Creality does sell their own air purifier system, but in here, this is in my basement and I have my own exhaust system that takes all the fumes outside of the house. One of the things you're going to have to do before you start engraving anything to use the autofocus is to start the calibration, and you're going to need your calibration card to do that. You can either start the calibration from the smart display on the Falcon A1, or you can also go into the app on your computer and it'll kind of guide you through the calibration process. You're going to be moving that calibration card into all 9 quadrants of the Falcon's bed. And most likely you're going to have to even adjust it in each one of the quadrants because you're trying to get a score of at least 70 or above for the best accuracy. Then you just need a piece of cardboard or the piece of wood that came with the Falcon A1 so the engraver could engrave these 4 points onto the board. It'll ask you to click in the center of each crosshair to complete the calibration process. Now, when it comes to the software that you can use with the Falcon A1, there are 3 different options. You can either use Laser GRBL, you can use Lightburn, which is paid, or you could use the Creality Falcon Design Space, which I have up here, and that's totally free for you to use. And that's what I'm going to use for this whole process. And it's actually quite capable. This is what it looks like. You've got your design space right here. On the left-hand side, we've got a couple different options for text, different shapes. You can trace out what's on your screen. You've got a ruler. You can insert some images. On the right-hand side, you've got your engraving options. You've got some different mediums that you can choose from that are already pre-installed, so you don't takes all the guesswork out of what power or speed you need to use for a specific material. You can either use Wi-Fi or you can also use a USB cable connected directly to the Falcon A1 Pro with your computer. I've got my Mac Studio in here, so we're going to be using that. You can use Windows if you want to as well. So you don't have to have your computer right next to the Falcon A1 Pro. You can have it in the next room if you really need to. And then for the camera, we've got some different options here. You've got the photo, which takes a photo of whatever's in your Falcon A1 Pro, displays it on your screen, so you can easily line up your projects right onto your materials. We've got the camera calibration up here, which I told you about earlier. And then you can also see that the laser is connected by USB, and you can also change the different lasers. I've also got the IR laser, which we will be doing. I'll be showing you later on in the video. We've got options for autofocus and our framing. So the first project we're going to do is something pretty simple. I'm just going to engrave something on this little wooden round here. It's about a 4.25 millimeter thickness. And we're just going to engrave an Aztec little drawing that I had right onto this coin. Like I mentioned before, it is pretty simple. So we'll put our round inside the Creality, making sure that the little laser is on the little wooden round, and then we're going to hit autofocus. You want to make sure that you do that for materials that are in different thicknesses, because that is going to affect how crisp the engraving is on your wood. So now that it's done autofocusing, we need to move the laser out of the way. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go into frame here and just hit this little cursor in the middle, and it'll move the laser back to its home position. And then once that's done, we're going to take a photo so we can see the round on our plate here. And you can see it showed up right here. So now I'm going to import the Aztec symbol. You can see I've got it saved kind of right here. and here is the Aztec. So you can already see that it's got a lot going on. I actually took this image and shrunk it down greatly so it would fit on this little coin. It's actually not meant to be this small, so it's going to be a little hard for some of these details to actually come out on such a small coin. It's actually made to be on like a coaster, so for the details would come out a lot better. But I'm going to line this up on my round here, and once we have it lined up on the round where you would like it to be, then you're going to hit frame, and it's actually going to frame up on the little wooden round so you can see that your image is going to be perfectly lined up where you want it. Now before I see it's going to be lined up, I want to go in and change some settings. I want to pick cyclic pass and border because this is a round coin, it's not square, and the cyclic pass will actually keep going back and doing the frame over and over again, so you don't have to keep pressing the button to make it go on. As far as the power, I wouldn't go much past 4 because you don't want to start engraving into the wood. You can also change the movement speed and the distance if it's kind of moving a little bit too quickly for you to see if it's actually lined up on your coin. So again, I think this is pretty much lined up where I need it to be, and I'm going to hit frame. All right, so I'm going to stop frame. You can see that it's pretty much lined up how I want it to be on the little wood round here. Now this also has different layers that you could set to do different things. You can make one a line engraving, and you can make another layer a line cutting to actually cut out the whole coin. I'm just going to do the laser engraving, and now we just need to make sure that we have the settings correct for the type of wood that we're using, and it goes layer by layer as well. So you can see that the image engraving layer is set to the basewood board, which is 4mm, but the other engraving is not set correctly, so we need to make sure we do that. Click Plank, basewood board, and about 4mm. You can set it to all layers and just hit confirm. That way it'll go to all of your layers, and you can see everything is now pretty much set. We've got our line engraving set to 5000 speed and 30 power, and whatever you have here, if you have it not set to output, it will not laser that onto your system. So you can kind of go layer by layer as well, but I've got both these layers set and everything else looks pretty good. Also make sure that your engraving plane height is set properly. And then once you're all ready, just hit start and it'll start engraving onto the wooden coin. One thing I do want to mention about using the smart camera to align your engravings onto your materials is that it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be slightly off. You can see on the screen here that what I want engraved onto the coin is ever so slightly smaller than the actual coin itself. So like I said, it'll get you really close to where you want your engraving to be on your medium, but there will be a little bit of tweaking you'll have to do. All right, so let's take a closer look at this coin. Just kind of refocus here. So I did 2 passes on this coin because I wanted to get some kind of deeper engraving, and you can see how much detail we get on this coin. The engraving is so small, but yet it is so sharp. That looks really nice. I got it kind of lined up on this coin the best that I could, but I think that came out pretty nice. Of course, you can get a much deeper engraving if you do more passes, but I only did 2 passes just to try to get like a surface engraving. But this this definitely shows you how sharp this small detail can get and still look really good on this coin. And if we zoom in a little more, you can even see the detail a lot better. It's hard for me to even see that just by looking at it with my own eyes. I have to kind of zoom in to actually see the small detail. That looks really good. All right, so I did one more engraving for the Aztec coin here. This one with 5 passes, so I can get a little bit of a deeper engraving. And here's what it came out like. Definitely deeper than the other coin. Seems like it still maintains a lot of the detail. You can see we have a little bit more depth to the coin here. I also kind of repositioned it so I can get it more perfectly on the coin here. I think that came out pretty nice. Looks pretty cool. So for our next project, we're going to be doing another engraving, but this time it's going to be on a much bigger piece of wood. And because it is near Halloween, we're going to be engraving a scary face onto this piece of wood that looks like a pumpkin. So we'll put it inside the engraver. We're also going to be doing autofocus because this is a different thickness of wood. So we'll set that in the engraver. We'll hit autofocus. And if you're ever having problems with the autofocus working, make sure that the smart camera is nice and clean, because if it's not, it will have an effect on the autofocus. So we'll move our camera out of the way and then we'll take a photo. All right, so here we have our pumpkin, and I'll import our picture, which is going to be this one right here. And you'll notice that the square of the image is actually a lot bigger than what the actual image is. And you kind of don't want that. You want that to be as tight as possible, because when you're trying to line this up perfectly on your wood and you want the frame to show you exactly where your image is going to be, you want it to be as tight on that image as possible. So another thing, you can also edit the image before you use it. And I don't need the little stem up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Smart Cutout, and I'm going to erase it myself, change the image size here, and I'm going to kind of get rid of this little stem here before we actually do the trace, and it gets rid of the stem. So we'll hit confirm. Then again, you want it to be as tight as possible. So I'm going to use the trace image. So once that's done, we can kind of get rid of that first image, and we have our other image here. You can see that the stem is gone. And now, again, you want to make that square as tight as possible on your image. So I'm going to go trace image, change the threshold here. You can see that it outlined the image, confirm, and we can get rid of that image here, and we just have the trace. So now you can see how tight that box is, and it only goes to the outer lines of my outline, so you can more accurately line it up with the wood here. So I'm going to just kind of make this a little bit bigger. Again, you want to make it just a little bit smaller than what you're actually lasering onto. So I think that's probably going to be pretty good. So we'll go over to frame here, again, cyclic pass, and I'm probably going to do the regular border here, because you can see that if the straight line hits on the bottom and the sides of your wood, you should be good to go. So we're going to hit frame here. We'll see where this is lined up at. So it looks like I need to make it just a little bit smaller. So it looks like on our right side, it's just a little bit more. So we just need to move this in, and we'll, on the bottom, just a little bit up, just a tad, and we'll frame it again. And that looks pretty good. So like I said before, you can see that it gets you in the ballpark, but then you just need to do a little bit of tweaking here and there to kind of line it up exactly how you want it. Now I also don't want this just to outline the face, I want it to totally engrave it. So we need to go over to the layer that it's in and change it from line engraving over to fill engraving. And as you can see, it filled it right up, and that's what it's gonna look like. The speed and power are all set because we already have the basewood board set up as well. And I think everything else should be pretty much good to go. So I'm gonna hit start and we'll see how it comes out. Another really cool thing at the bottom here, it will show you how much time it's going to take for this whole thing to totally complete. And it looks like it's gonna take 1 hour and 17 minutes. So we'll come back in that time and we'll see what it looks like. All right, so that looks pretty good. I'm gonna take a picture so you guys can see without me having to move the camera, because I want to do something a little bit extra here. So I'll turn this off and you can kind of see the engraving on the pumpkin. I think it came out looking pretty good, but I want to make it stand out a little bit more. So instead of doing a fill, I'm going to do a line engraving, and what that's going to do is it's just going to go around all of the engraving and make like a line that stands out a little more, just to make it a little bit more bolder instead of it being kind of as soft as it is. So I'm going to turn the power up to 100%. I'm going to keep the speed exactly the same. And we'll just start it one more time, and then I'll show you exactly what it looks like. All right, so it just finished. I had to go turn off my exhaust, so it's a little bit more quiet in here. I'm going to take it out of the engraver. And I think that came out looking pretty good. So you can see how nice the engraving was, and then with the line engraving, it just kind of went around the outline of the engraving, making the picture stand out that much more. So mixing the fill with the line engraving can do a lot for making your picture stand out that much more. And you can see how perfectly the pumpkin is lined up on the wood. I think that looks pretty good. Now, of course, the engraving, this was just one pass. If you want it a little bit darker, you can do more passes, but of course, that's going to add on to the time. But for one pass, I think this came out looking pretty good. You can see the outline, how it makes it stand out a lot more. Just makes it look more bold instead of kind of soft looking. Our next project is going to be cutting out my name in some acrylic, and Creality makes it super easy for you to input engraving and cutting parameters. Their materials come with this little QR code. It shows the picture of what the material is, and the QR code, you just hold this right in front of the smart camera. It scans the QR code and it automatically inputs the parameters for your engraving and cutting. It's super easy. So we'll put our acrylic into the machine. Kind of line that up. Then you're going to hold the QR code in front of the smart camera. It'll read it up on the screen. It says automatic material identification. Now you can either apply this to your current layer or all layers. I'm just going to go ahead and do all layers and say yes. And you'll see that up at the top here, it's changed the speed to 4,000 and the power to 45, and changed the material to the green frosted acrylic, which we've put into the laser engraver. Then we'll take a picture so we can see the acrylic. We'll import our picture. Clean it up a bit. Line it up on our acrylic. Check our framing. Change our layer to line cutting. All right, everything looks lined up, so I'm going to go ahead and start the process. All right, so that took about 12 minutes and 30 seconds. And if you'll notice, For this engraving and some of the other cutting and engravings that I'm doing, I'm using this honeycomb plate, and I would definitely recommend that you get it along with the Falcon A1 Pro if you're going to be doing any cutting whatsoever, because the honeycomb plate allows airflow to get underneath your print, keeping the underside of your cut from getting all burned. So let's take out our cut right here. And as you can see, my name just kind of fell out of the acrylic. So we'll put that off to the side. We'll take out my name. And there you go. It came out really nice. Nice and clean. Now I just need to peel off the top protective layer and we'll take a closer look at that. So I peeled off all the protective tape and this is what the cutting looked like. I think it came out really clean. Nice and sharp. And the reason why I left the protective paper on here when I did the engraving is because it keeps or protects the top and the bottom of your acrylic from getting scored and burned. So that's what you can expect from a laser cutting from acrylic. I think, again, I think it looks really good front and back. So now we're going to test out the claims that Creality says that you can cut out 10mm basewood. Now, I didn't have any 10mm basewood, so I just simply stacked about, I think like 4 plates of 3mm basewood, which of course is not 10, it's a little more, it's actually 12. So I'm going to cut out this lightning bolt from this wood and we're going to see how well it performs. So here we go. All right, so that took less than a minute. Let's see if it actually went all the way through. And it did look like it almost went through all the way. Let's see if I can kind of push this out. So I was able to kind of push that through, but as you can see on the bottom, because it didn't quite go all the way through, it kind of didn't make a clean cut. So let's try this one more time. I'm going to kind of turn down the speed a little bit, and that should make it go all the way through the wood. All right, so again, that was pretty quick. All I did was turn down the speed, and let's see if it actually made it all the way through. So it looks like it kind of burnt the bottom of the wood. So maybe just instead of turning down the speed, maybe just do another pass. But this definitely came out a lot easier. I pushed through a lot easier than the other one, but as you can see, it did burn a little bit more. So now I'm going to try this again. I'm going to turn the speed back up, but I'm going to make it do one more pass than it did previously. All right, so let's check this one out. See if it went all the way through. And it does look like it did. You can see that the wood is left on the honeycomb plate. Here's what the front looks like, nice and clean. But here's what the back looks like. You can see that it's not as sharp as the top was. But the claims that Creality says that it can burn or cut through to at least 10mm basewood is definitely true, because you saw we actually went through 12mm of basewood. And then I want to do this one more time with just a little bit more tweaking to see if we can get it just right. So for this last time, I actually bumped up the speed a little bit to kind of compensate for the extra pass that we made. Let's take it out. And it looks like it did go all the way through the back here. I'll just kind of push this out. You can see it starting to come out. Let me push it out the rest of the way. And it came out really nice. So it did actually cut out all the way through. And I think it looks a lot cleaner than this last pass we did here. So you can see that you can cleanly cut through more than 10mm of basewood. You're just going to have to play around with the parameters to try to get it just right. So remember when I mentioned earlier that the Falcon A1 Pro came with Air Assist and how great that was? Well, let me show you why exactly that is. we're going to be doing some engravings on wood, one with the air assist off and then the other with the air assist on, so I can show you what the difference is. All right, so we're all finished here. Let's take a look. So if we take a look at the wood here, for the most part, you can see that it did a pretty good job at cutting out, but some of the wood actually got scorched from the burning. You can see it a lot more on the stars here. It's definitely not as clean as the wood could be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the air assist on and we're going to see if there's any difference in the scoring. So now we're going to do the same cutout but with the air assist turned on, and you'll see what the difference is. All right, now here's what the engraving looks like with the air assist that was used. Let's get all of our stars out of here. And here it is. So if we look closely, this is what it looks like with the air assist off, and this is what it looked like with the air assist on. You can clearly see all the stars here. You don't see any scoring from the laser like you do on the portion where the air was off. It looks so much cleaner, and because there's no scoring, it allows you to save time on cleanup for your project later on. Now let's do a super small engraving to see how small we can get the text to be still readable. All right, so here I did 3 different levels of engraving for my name. The smallest one I can't even see, so I'm gonna have to use the phone to make it out, but there, as you can see, you can clearly see my name here, even with the second one. And the smallest one, I'm gonna have to zoom in with my phone. All right, so if we look a little closer, you can clearly see the 2 Tonys, but that very last one, you really can't make it out, so I might need to just slow down the laser a little bit so it can actually do the engraving. All right, so I tried it one more time with a little slower speed and a little more power, and you can still clearly see that the very smallest one is hard to make out, but the other 2 came out pretty good. And here's my finger for comparison. You can see how small that actually is. So now I'm going to show you how batch engraving works. So if you're doing engravings on the same type of material with the same image, you can just simply put all of your pieces of material inside the laser engraver, and the AI should fill each one of those pieces of material with that same image. I'm going to show you how that works right now, and we're going to be using these wooden coins. So we just need to place our wooden coins that we're going to be engraving on into the engraver here. I'm going to line them up in a line. Now this typically comes out the best if you have contrasting materials. So I've placed a piece of black foam down inside the laser engraver because the contrast between the black and the wood is really great, and it makes it a lot easier for the AI to easily fill up your materials. So now that we have the materials in place, we just need to do an autofocus. Then we need to accurately put in the measurements for the engraving plane height, and that includes everything that's inside the engraver, including the honeycomb plate, the foam pad, and your material. So the honeycomb plate is about 16 millimeters without those rubber pads. The foam pad is about 5 millimeters, and then the wood coins are about 4.24 millimeters. So we need to put in the whole parameter for that, and it should be 25.24 millimeters. Then we'll take our photo. As you can see, all of our coins, and then we need to get our graphic on here. So now that we have our graphic, we need to accurately place it onto one of the coins and make sure that it's framed up perfectly. All right, so I have this lined up on the one coin the best that I think I can get it. So now we're going to go to Smart Fill. We're going to select our graphic. This is the one we want to copy and fill. And we'll click Smart Fill. So as you can see, it's simply filled up all the other coins with that one graphic. Now they should be all lined up. We're going to just press start and we're going to see what the engraving looks like. One more time, just want to make sure all my parameters are set. So I've done the autofocus. I've accurately put in the measurements for the height for the plane, and I made sure that the one graphic that I copied was fairly lined up perfectly on that one coin. So now all we need to do is press start. All right, so our batch engraving has completed, and before I take them out of the laser, I'm going to take a picture and I want to show you the top-down view of what it actually looks like compared to where the graphics are. So I'm going to take a picture really quick here with the camera. So you can kind of see how everything got aligned on the coins. It looks super close. You can see there's just a slight shadowing where the graphics are versus where it actually lasered. So that was pretty on point. So I'm going to turn off that layer so you guys can see what the engraving actually looks like. And here's what we have. So for the most part, it looks pretty good. The coins actually look like they're lined up pretty good. There might be one coin here that is just ever so slightly off, but the other 4 coins, I think they look pretty good. So if you're going to be doing the batch engraving, again, it's very important for you to, one, get that first graphic lined up almost perfectly, and very importantly, you need to make sure that you put in the proper parameters or measurements for your engraving plane height. That's very important. So let's take these coins out. We'll take a look here. So here's one of the engravings that kind of got really close to the bottom edge of the coin, but I think the engraving came out looking great. Now it looks really good. You can see how it should have been kind of a little bit more up on the coin, but that's just one of them. Let's take a look at some of the others. Here's another coin where the placement on here looks pretty much perfect. It's just ever so slightly down to the bottom where we have just a little bit up on the top there. But again, the engraving looks really good. And then here is another example. This one looks perfectly lined up on the coin. You can see there's not much extra edge on the outside of the coin. And again, the engraving looks really good. And then here is another coin where it's kind of more towards the top where it should have been kind of a little bit towards the bottom. But again, I think the engraving looks pretty good. And then here we have our last one. Again, it looks almost perfectly placed on our coin here. So even though the batch engraving isn't 100% perfect, I think it still comes pretty close. So if you're going to be doing batch engraving on something that you don't need to be super precise, maybe some sort of a coaster or something like that, the batch engraving will definitely save you some time. So these next couple projects are very near and dear to my heart. I lost my puppy a little more than a year ago, and I'm always looking for ways that I can remember her. So this next project is going to incorporate acrylic and wood. I'm going to make a little ornament of her paw print, and then we're going to engrave a metal dog tag, which I have here using the diode laser. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll see that I've been wearing this bracelet. It holds her ashes, and if you've lost a pet yourself and you're looking for a way to kind of keep them close to you, I would highly recommend checking out the company that made this urn bracelet. They make a whole bunch of other really cool jewelry, and it's on Etsy. And if you guys want to check them out, I'll be putting a link in the video description. So first we need to use some 3mm basswood to cut out her paw print and the backing for the paw print as well. So we'll put this in the laser, kind of line it up the best we can here. Then we'll do our autofocus. Then we'll scan the QR code to make sure that the program knows exactly what material we're using. So we'll click that for all layers. We'll kind of move the laser engraver out of the way and take a photo. All right, so there we have our wood. Then we need to import our picture, which is going to be her paw print here. Then we'll do a trace image. So there we have our paw print, and then we just need to resize this. Then I need to make an offset so we can have an outer layer for her paw print. And then I need to make the backing a different layer because we're gonna just cut that out. So I'm gonna set this for the orange. Again, we're gonna do the line cutting. Then I need to make a copy of this layer because we need a backing for our print, which we'll put here. Now we just need to make sure we're all lined up on our board here. We'll do our frame. All right, that looks pretty good. Everything looks lined up, so now we'll do our cut. All right, so cutting that out literally only took a couple minutes. It was actually pretty quick. So we'll take this out, see how nice and clean that is. And here are our prints. So you can see here is the back plate and here is the front paw pad, and this is gonna kind of go right behind here. And then we're gonna cut out the acrylic and put it inside the little paw pad sections to make it look like a 3D paw print. It's gonna come out pretty good, I think. And you can also see because of the air assist, there are no scorch marks on any part of the wood. It looks super clean, so that's less that you have to do after your cutouts. So now we'll put our red acrylic in here. We'll scan our QR code. We'll say yes. We'll take a picture and we'll also autofocus just in case. All right, so there is our picture with the acrylic. Now for this, we only need the little paws. So I'm going to turn this one off. I'm going to turn this one off, and that'll just leave our paw pad prints here that we need to cut out. It is set up for the purple frosted. We've got all of our parameters input, and let's frame it up. So that is perfectly in place. Everything looks good, so now we're just gonna go ahead and start the process. All right, so cutting that out took about 10 minutes. Let's take out our acrylic. And we just have to kind of push these out. So it seems like that just needed a little more power to get through because they didn't totally cut out. So I'm going to increase the power just a little bit, and we're going to recut our paw print here. So the only thing that I did is I added one more time for it to go through the outline to complete the full cut. All right, so that extra layer added about 4 minutes to the total time, which is about 14. So let's take out our acrylic, and they pretty much just fall out. Nice clean cutting. So here are all of our paw prints. And now I just need to peel off the protective layer. All right, so I've finished peeling off all the protective layer, and there's what the cutout looks like. Nice and clean, no burning. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to put all these into the paw print, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So again, this is what the ending is going to look like. We've got the wood cutout with the acrylic inlay. I just need to glue all this together, and then we're going to do one more engraving on the back. So I ended up using just some regular Elmer's glue to hold everything together, and I also ended up adding some 2mm spacers just so I could kind of get the acrylic to get like a 3D effect and come up out of the wood just a little bit. And then I finished it off with some clamps to allow everything to set. All right, so my ornament is all glued, and I also put in some spacers behind the acrylic just to kind of make it a little bit more 3D and pop out a little bit more, and I think it came out really good. Now there's just one more thing I want to add, just a little personal touch to the ornament, and I'm going to engrave my puppy's picture along with some sayings on the back of the ornament just to personalize it a little bit more. So we'll put our ornament face down in the laser engraver here. Then we'll do an autofocus. Then we'll take our picture. Then we'll line it up on the back of the ornament here. Then we'll frame it up. And that looks perfect. All right, so let's start it up. All right, so that took about 7 minutes to complete. Let's take a look. I think that came out pretty good. And here it is. So I think the image engraving came out pretty good. It's just a tad bit darker than I would have liked, but of course you can always tweak that with the power and the speed. But as far as the way that it looks, I think it looks really good. And then for the text, it was I used bubble text. So it didn't engrave it. It actually did like a outline of it, but I think the text looks pretty sharp and looks pretty good. I really can't complain. I think this project came out beautifully. Now for the next project, we're going to be using the diode laser to engrave onto this dog tag. And with this project, I'm going to be able to show you what the diode and the IR laser does on metal, because Creality says not to use the diode laser on the mirror portion of the dog tag. So we're going to use the diode on one side and the IR on the other, and you'll see what the difference is. Also very important, when you're engraving on metal, you want to make sure that it's totally clean before you do your engraving, because that could affect the quality. So just kind of wipe it off with a little bit of alcohol and you should be good. So we're going to put our dog tag inside the laser engraver, right where the laser is. Close it up. Then we'll do our autofocus, and we'll take our picture here. Okay. Then I've got my saying here that I want to put on the back. I think that looks pretty good. We just need to frame it up. Also, you need to make sure that you change the material to the metal that you're using. And this is brushed stainless steel, 2 millimeters. So we'll confirm for all layers, and then we'll frame it up. And I think it looks pretty good. So everything looks good. We've got our speed and our power set here, our material, everything's lined up. All we need to do is press start. All right, so that took about a minute to complete. Just be very careful. It might be a little warm when you take it out. I think that came out beautifully. Look how sharp that text is. Now you can see that it is a little red, and whenever you're engraving metal, you will get this. You'll get like this reddish look. So all you need to do is kind of wipe it off again with a little bit of alcohol, and it should turn or wipe away all the excess metal, bringing it to look a lot more black. And there it is. So I wiped it off with a little bit of alcohol, and you can see how sharp that is. Looks really nice. Came out really good looking. So now we need to do the mirrored side with the image engraving, and we're going to use the IR laser to do that. And I also get to show you how easy it is to swap out these laser modules. All right, so let me show you how easy it is to swap out this laser module. First, we have this little lever on the side here. We just need to lift that up. But before I do that, you see the little LED is green here. That's to let you know that everything is properly connected. But when I take the laser out, you'll notice that it changes red. So we'll flip up the little lever here. And then on the left, there's this little black lever here. All you just need to do is push that in and under and lift up on this little black piece here. That comes off, and you'll notice that the LED is now blinking red to let you know that everything is not connected. Then just simply lift out the laser module, and then we can put in our IR 2-watt laser. Just simply slides down over the top, just like that. Then tighten down the lever on the side here. Just like that. Then take this piece here, making sure that that little black piece here is pushed in. Then we just need to seat this over the laser and then just push down. Make sure the little lever is pushed back over, and you'll notice that the little LED is now green to let you know that everything is good to go. Now, since we changed out the laser module, there's a couple settings we need to make sure we change in the Falcon Design Studio. So if we go down here to where it says laser, we need to make sure we change this to the 2-watt IR. Confirm. Automatically fill engrave, no. All right, so everything's connected. It's changed to the 2-watt IR. We're using a mirrored aluminum, so we need to make sure we change our material. There really isn't any setting in here for mirrored stainless steel, so I'm just going to keep it on the brushed stainless steel. We'll see how it comes out. The next thing we need to do is to take our dog tag, place it inside of our laser. Then we'll do our autofocus. All right, now another thing that I did, because this is mirrored, I inverted the image and it should come out a lot better, whereas the wood, you wouldn't want to invert the image. So I'm going to place this over the dog tag where I want it. Okay, so I think the framing looks pretty good. It's hard to see because it is mirrored and it's really small, so it's kind of hard to see exactly where the frame is, but I think I have it lined up pretty good. All right, so let's start it up and see what it looks like. All right, so it is all done engraving. You want to make sure that it's not hot when you take it out. And this is what it looks like right from the laser. So you can see it's got kind of like that a little bit of a red tinge to it. So I'm going to wipe it off really quick with some alcohol. So I got some of the oxidization off. You can see the little, how dirty the rag is when you get done wiping it off. But I think it came out pretty nice. So here's what it looks like from the front. It's hard to see because it's mirrored, but the text is nice and sharp. So you can see the text there looks super sharp, very clean. There's the picture. I think it came out pretty nice. That's pretty sharp as well. Again, you can always mess around with the speed and the power settings because there was no setting for a mirrored finish in there. And if you want it to be a little lighter, a little darker, you can always fix that. But as far as the sharpness goes, you really can't fix that if it's not sharp. But that looks super clean. Very nice. And then again, here's the brushed backing. Again, very sharp text. That came out really good, I think. So one project that I found that works really well with the IR laser is engraving things on black plastic, particularly things that are 3D printed. So I have an Etsy shop where I make props, and one of the things that I engraved was a little plaque for my Aliens pulse rifle stand, and this was just a black plastic print, and all this right here was engraved from the IR laser. You can see that it really doesn't burn the plastic, it just kind of removes the black and leaves this really nice kind of grayish engraving. It looks really cool. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to engrave something onto the back of a phone case, which anybody can do just to kind of jazz up your phone cases a little bit, make it stand out, make it unique, because this is just simply a black plastic phone case. So we're going to use the IR laser. I'm going to engrave something on the back of this case, and we're going to see how it comes out. I think it's going to look really good. Now, something very important to note for this project is that there is no presetting for black plastic. So I had to actually go in and add my own custom setting. I went into Add Custom and added in all of the parameters. So we'll go to Custom. I've got my custom setting here for black PLA with the IR laser. I'm going to set it for all layers. And as you can see, it's now set the speed to 5,000 and power of 50. And that should make this come out looking really good. So I've already lined everything up. I've framed everything, and the only thing left to do now is to pretty much hit start. So let's do it. All right, so we're all done with this. It took about 18 minutes to complete, and let's take a look at how this came out. I think it came out pretty good. Looks really neat. Now again, this wasn't 3D printed plastic, so I didn't know exactly how this is going to come out because the settings that I had were for the PLA that I do print, but you're just going to have to kind of tweak and mess around with it with the different plastics that you're going to be using, and you can get this to come out even better than I got mine. Maybe make it a little lighter, a little darker. It all depends on what you really want it to look like, but for the most part, I think this came out looking pretty good. Now you can also laser engrave leather. So we're going to do another phone case that's been covered in a leather type material. Now there is no leather phone case setting for the materials drop down, so we're just going to be using the leather coasters preset, and we'll see how good it comes out using the IR laser. So for this project, we're going to be using the Fallout logo, and I'm going to do a fill engraving, so it kind of fills out that whole logo. Everything is already set. Again, I got my material set to the leather coasters. I've already framed everything up, so all we need to do is press start. So that took about an hour to complete, and it looks amazing from what I can tell right now. Again, this is just from the presets. I did not tweak anything. You probably could have made this go a little bit quicker, but for what I did, I think it looks great. And here is the case. The text looks nice and sharp. There is a slight texture because it kind of engraved into the case itself. So again, whenever you're engraving something for the very first time and you don't know how it's going to react, you might have to tweak it just a little bit here and there to get it ever so slightly perfect. But like I said before, this is the first time I've engraved on this type of case with the presets that are already in here, and I think it came out looking great. Another thing that I absolutely love about this is because it is self-enclosed, it keeps your mess all in one place and off your desk. And it makes it very easy to clean up as well. If we take out the honeycomb plate here, you'll see my mess all inside. And all the smaller particles are very easy to vacuum up. So it's very easy to keep your work area nice and clean. So now I'm going to show you what the difference is between using the IR laser and the diode laser on the PLA print that I printed out from my 3D printer. It makes a huge difference, and you'll see exactly why the IR laser is better to use on black plastic. So this first image is going to be using the IR laser on a 1mm thick PLA square that I printed out again on my 3D printer. Everything is framed up, so I'm just going to go ahead and press start. And I've also selected the black PLA IR material preset that I custom made for this. All right, so that only took about a minute to complete, and I think it came out looking really good. So it didn't really melt the plastic, it just kind of took the pigment out of the black, and you can see how nice and sharp that is. You can see it really didn't engrave into the plastic itself. It just kind of took off the very first layer. Came out super sharp. Looks really good. So again, if you're going to be using anything like black plastic, you're probably going to want to use the IR laser to get this kind of engraving. So now let me show you the same engraving using the diode laser, of course with the parameters set for the diode, and we'll see what the difference is. So the difference is pretty noticeable, and if we look here, you could definitely see the difference. The IR versus the diode laser, and you're not going to be able to get this type of quality using the diode laser because the diode laser kind of melts the plastic, whereas the IR laser kind of just takes away the pigment, and it just looks so much better. So if you're going to be engraving plastic, especially black plastic, I would definitely tell you to go with the IR laser over the diode. And remember that plaque that I showed you earlier in the video for my pulse rifle stand? Well, here's what it looks like coming directly from this laser. So that took about 15 minutes, and this came out way better than I thought. And here is the plaque. Look at how sharp that is. That came out really good. Now don't mind the messed up kind of 3D print that I have in the background. Look at how sharp the laser engraving is. That came out really good. And like I said, it took only about 15 minutes. And you can notice that it didn't really engrave any of the plastic. It just kind of took away the pigment from the black PLA. So it's nice and smooth. That looks amazing. Now, like I mentioned before, the settings for different type of plastics are going to vary. Because I had the 3D printed plastic dialed in, it came out looking amazing, whereas the phone case, it still came out looking pretty good, but it's not as sharp as the 3D printed plaque was, and that's because this is a different type of plastic. So again, you will have to kind of try to dial in those settings when you're engraving. So I mentioned to you earlier in the video that the bottom of the laser engraver is actually removable. And that's important because it can actually expand what you can laser engrave with this engraver. What happens if you have something that's too big to actually fit inside the laser? Well, if you take the bottom out, you actually have all of the underneath to engrave what you need. So I came up with a little system myself. I have this little wood piece here that I can actually pull out, and I put the laser on top of here, and it gives me all this space underneath it to actually engrave what I need to. Well, let me show you what I mean. And it's very easy to remove the tray. All you need to do is remove these 4 little screws here. There's 2 on each side, and they actually give you the tools to take this out, included with the Falcon A1. Then once you remove all the screws, you can just simply lift the tray up and out of the bottom of the Falcon A1. And then if we look through the top of the laser, you can now see how much area underneath we actually have to engrave with. Now just keep in mind, when you remove the bottom part of the Falcon A1, you are no longer keeping it enclosed, and whatever you're engraving on, all those fumes will escape from the bottom of the laser engraver. Some of it will get ejected out of your exhaust system, but if you're going to remove the bottom part of the laser engraver like I just did, I would highly recommend only using the laser in a very well ventilated area, or even outside if you're going to use it like this. So let's say you have something to engrave kind of like this piece that I have here. I want to engrave something on the very edge of this piece, but it's way too tall to fit into the Falcon A1. So that's where this comes in. I took out the bottom of the Falcon A1, and then I can put this up through the top, and I can raise it up exactly where the bottom portion of the tray would be, and the laser will still autofocus, and now we can engrave on the top of this, whereas it would be too big if we just had the Falcon A1 with the bottom tray put in. So here, as you can see, I've got my piece standing up where I need it to be. I've got this little tray on the bottom that kind of lifted. I can adjust the height so it's perfectly set where it needs to be, and I can now engrave on the side of the piece. And it doesn't matter that the tray is gone. The Falcon doesn't realize that it's not there. So again, all you need to do is close all of the lids and it will still work just the same. So we're going to close the lid here. So first we're going to do an autofocus. It should autofocus exactly the way that it did before. All right, so it just autofocused, no problems there. Just move the laser out of the way. So I want to engrave these scratches onto my piece here. I just need to kind of line this up. Now I'm going to frame this up and I'll show you that it frames up exactly as it did with the tray in. So we'll hit frame and it looks like it's framed up perfectly. So everything's lined up, I'm autofocused, my material is set to the black PLA with the IR laser, and the parameters are put in. So let's hit start and see what happens. All right, so the engraving is all done. Now this is a different type of plastic, and as you can see, instead of it turning white, it just kind of made this really kind of cool engraving. It is darker than the black part here, so you can easily see it. And that just goes to show you how you're going to have to kind of experiment with different plastics, because the laser engraver reacts differently with different kind of plastics, as you can see here. Another really cool thing that you can use a smart camera for is copying or tracing text or an image that you have, kind of like you would with a scanner. So if you have, something maybe from a magazine that you want to engrave onto something, you can just simply place it into the laser engraver, use the camera, and it'll actually trace out whatever image you have. And let me show you what I mean. So I don't really have any images, so I'm just going to use the Creality IR laser module, and we're going to take the text from the laser module and we're going to put it into our project. So really all you need to do is just simply put whatever you need inside the laser engraver, and we're going to take a photo. So here, as you can see, we have the laser module in here, and again we're going to just copy the text from the laser. So we're going to go to our three little dots here underneath our camera tab. We're going to say trace photo, and then we need to kind of adjust the threshold here and kind of zoom in a little bit to see what you're getting. So you can see we've got these little red dots all over the place. We want to get it to where it's just taking the text. So again, you just need to play around with the threshold a little bit to where it's just cleanly outlining the Creality Falcon. So I think that's pretty good. At about 125, we'll just hit confirm. And we don't want this to be a fill engraving, we just want it to be a line engraving, so you can see it cleanly outline this. Then we need to kind of take what we just need and get rid of the rest. So what I'm going to do is, you can see we've got the outline layer here. I'm going to ungroup everything. I'm going to select these little dots here to try to kind of get those to go away. And then I'm just going to select the Creality Falcon, and I'm going to set it to a different layer. So it'll just totally take that out. Let's see, purple. And then just turn off the line engraving for everything else. And as you can see, it got rid of everything else except for what we want, and that's the line engraving. You can see how clean that is. It actually looks pretty good. So again, if you have some sort of an image or text or something like that that you want to take from a page of a magazine or something like that, you just simply put it into the laser engraver and you can trace it out. It works pretty good. So now that I've had a chance to use the Falcon A1 Pro for a couple weeks and do some projects, let me tell you about some of the issues that I ran into, but mostly the good things that I love about it. So first off, let me tell you about the things that I love about this, and number one has to be the autofocus. It makes setup fast and consistent, so you don't have to worry about manually measuring or guessing the focal distance. This automatically does it for you for nice, crisp, clean engravings every time. And this is especially useful for when using different materials that have different thicknesses. The next thing that I think is an absolute must for every laser engraver you get has to be the built-in smart camera. This single feature is a huge quality of life improvement. It easily allows you to see where your design is going to end up on your material, so you don't have to guess where it's going to end up. And being able to use the smart camera with the tracing feature is also something I think a lot of people would enjoy using, me included. The next thing I absolutely love is the closed design. Not only does it keep all the smoke and fumes encased inside of the box, but it also keeps you safe from the laser light. The enclosure is super solid and really well made from a all metal frame. And again, if you're going to be using it inside as a desktop unit, you're going to want to make sure that you have it connected up to an air purifier or some exhaust system like I have here. And it also makes cleanup really easy. As you saw from my video, it keeps all of your engraving shavings inside of the unit instead of all over your desk. The next thing I absolutely love about this unit is the fact that it has swappable laser modules. So if you don't want to engrave on rock, metal, things like that, you can just stick with the diode laser and save some money. But if you want to expand your business or your creativity and engrave on those other materials, you always have the option to buy the other IR laser. So the unit can kind of grow with you or your business. Another thing that I absolutely love that Creality did with this laser that's great, especially for beginners, is include a QR code card with each one of their materials. So if you buy their materials, you scan the QR code along with the smart camera, and it automatically inputs the best optimized settings for that material, so it takes all the guesswork out of it. So it can help beginners get great results right out of the box. One other thing that I absolutely love and I would recommend that everybody get with pretty much any laser that they would go out and buy is the automatic air assist. As you saw from the video, the air assist keeps your engraving nice and clean and free from any scorch marks. So that's less time you have to spend cleaning up your engraving after you're done, which can also save you money. And because it's automatic, it'll automatically turn on at the beginning of every engraving and then turn off when you're done. So you never have to worry about turning it on and off like some of the other lasers out there. And the last thing that I absolutely love about this engraver is the fact that the bottom tray actually comes out. So if you want to keep everything all enclosed, you can do that. But if you want to expand what your laser can actually laser, you can actually remove the tray and then you have all that space underneath the laser to actually engrave with. And if you haven't seen that in my video, you'll see this little contraption that I made with some wood and mounts that allow you to pretty much engrave anything of any height. And then as far as the couple issues that I ran into with the laser, they are by far deal breakers. They're just little inconveniences that I think Creality can actually fix with some software upgrades. The first one has to do with the autofocus. The autofocus does work really well when it works. Sometimes the laser engraver has trouble actually seeing the little red dot, and when it does that, it's not able to actually autofocus. The one way that I found out that fixes this issue pretty much every time is to just take a little piece of blue painter's tape, put it over whatever you're going to engrave on, and the laser seems to have no problem seeing that. But when you have overhead lighting like I do in my basement, and sometimes the materials that you put inside kind of absorbs that laser, it's going to have a little bit of trouble seeing that light. But again, like I said, take a little piece of blue painter's tape, put it over whatever your material is, and you shouldn't have any problems. Once it's done autofocusing, just take that piece of tape off and you're good to go. And the next little issue that I ran into had to do with the batch engraving. The batch engraving, as you saw from the video, does seem to do a pretty good job at aligning up your design on your material, but again, sometimes it has trouble seeing or differentiating between the materials and the back plating on the honeycomb plate. So whatever type of material you're going to use, kind of put something behind it to stand out. So if you're going to have pieces of wood, like I had the little wood coins, I put something black behind it to make it really stand out so the smart camera can really see and differentiate from what you're putting down in the bed. Basically, just make sure that there's two contrasting colors for whatever's inside the bed. So if you've got something dark, put something light behind it, and vice versa. So if you're new to laser engraving, the Creality Falcon A1 Pro definitely checks off a lot of boxes. It's safe, it's versatile, it's got a lot of features, and it's geared towards getting you making things versus struggling with the setup and calibration. So for someone starting out, if you're going to be using this machine for mixed materials or personalized gifts, this will definitely give you some room to grow without being overwhelmingly complex from day one. And I'm also curious to know what you guys thought about the Falcon A1 Pro. Let me know in the comments below. Also, remember, if you guys want to pick this up, don't forget to use my link in the video description. Also, if you guys enjoyed the video, let me know by hitting the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.